warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Yang
Salam.
saya hormati Prof. Astuti, Prof. Karul Rizal, Prof. Samira, Prof. Habibah, dan saudara-saudaraku sekalian. Thank you for inviting me this morning to share a talk on the subject of operation strategy and management challenges in the manufacturing sector in Malaysia. Saudara-saudaraku sekalian, there are probably a few 100,000 manufacturing companies in Malaysia. Recently, when MITI announced the PMO bulan Jun ni, it was reported that about 92,000 industries are allowed to operate because they are the essential services. Therefore, the rest of industries, perhaps the numbers are much more than that. I do not have the number at this moment. I retired from the mainstream manufacturing activities in 2006. Now I'm with Jurumuda. We produce industrial products, and we also produce consumer product and also a small quantity of automotive component. I'm also through another organizations, the Sapura Group, involved in the manufacture of components. I will try to share whatever little experience that I have through this talk, and please bear with me since I'm not so familiar with making a presentation online. So again, thank you very much for inviting me. Can I have the first slide, please? Next. So.
Datuk, boleh nampak skrin?
Belum lagi lah.
Oh, I see. The screen already next, Datuk.
Next. Yeah.
Oh, tak keluar.
Sini dah.
Yeah, Datuk, the screen already next, Datuk, already. This is already on the first page.
Yeah.
It's already displayed on the screen.
Well, I will adjust my my computer here, but in the meantime, I just continue. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. The first item that we want to look at is in the area of strategy of companies during this pandemic. Our pandemic, COVID-19, started somewhere in January 2020. And subsequent to that, the pandemic, we have the PMO starting on around 18th of March 2020. And many factories were instructed to be closed, and it lasted about 3 months. Initially, that was April, May, and June, where the companies were not allowed to operate except for those in essential services. And now we come to 2021, and again this June we undergo another case of PMO, which have lasted perhaps from June the 7th, and it will last until end of this month, June 28th. Many adjustments need to be done by the industries to face the many challenges during this pandemic. For us in Jurumuda, we produce industrial components or industrial product and also consumer product. We sell in the domestic, and at the same time, we have many customers overseas. We find that our first challenge overcoming this pandemic is in the area of our supply of raw materials. We bought our raw materials from America, from China, and also from the local suppliers. Based on perhaps the supply and the demand, our raw material prices start to go up, especially in metal products, the steel. So that is our first challenge, the supply of raw materials. The second challenge is the shipments of our product to our customers. During this pandemic, there has been a lot of shortage of containers in ASEAN region. Most of the containers has gone to Europe and remain empty in Europe. Because business is slow, these containers have got no opportunity to come back to Asia. As a result of that, our logistic and shipping costs increases. So those are the supply challenge and also the delivery challenge. As a strategy, we would like to make sure that we don't lose our customers. As a result, we take fast actions how to rearrange our delivery commitments to the customers so that during this pandemic, we can continue to serve our customers in the best possible manner. The target of which, at the end of this pandemic, we will still want our customers to be intact with us. As a result of this slowing down or the reduction in revenue of a business, we have got less income. As a strategy, we carry out our cost-cutting activities. We reduce on our expenses. We adjust our working hours, and we also do away with some of the activities that can help us reduce our expenses. The other strategy is we want to maintain our workforce so that when the pandemic ends, we will have got all the strength to continue with our business. However, we have got to make adjustments by working from home in a most productive manner that we can. We thank the government during this difficult period. We were given wage subsidy ranging between 1,200 to 300 to 600 ringgit on the affected employees. We in our company, beside the manufacturing, we are also in properties where the business is severely affected during this pandemic. Next slide, please.
Datuk,
Ya.
Datuk masih tak nampak?
Tak nampak lah, tak apa, tak
Page-
apa. I
page
think I'll
5.
just continue a bit, yeah, while you adjust the slides, yeah. But in order to perhaps go through this pandemic, we like to think that we have the short-term strategy and also the longer-term strategy. The shorter-term strategy is in the main trying to make sure that we have adequate cash. That means we want to look after our cash flow so that we can have enough money to buy materials and also to continue with our operation. We also adjust in terms of monitoring our manufacturing activities. We have got to have more frequent meetings. We have to have more frequent follow-ups so that we can determine whether our mitigating factor is effective. And if necessary, we continue to make adjustments during these weekly reviews. On the longer term, we're looking at reorganizing our resources. We look at how we can make adjustments in the organizations and also how we can perhaps optimize our assets that we have. Alongside that, we reset our business focus. In the longer term, how do you want to utilize better our machine and our assets? And in a more longer term issues, we are looking at our factory size, we're looking at into our plant layout so that in the longer term, we can continue to be sustainable. Next, please.
Continue, Datuk.
Ada. I didn't see,
Ada.
but I'll try. So the next item that we want to look at, this is again prompted by our moderator, perhaps asking me what is the most challenging operations management that I have encountered in the past. Alhamdulillah, the worst never happened. So there are many instances. However, I find that the most challenging period was in 1998 during the financial crisis. Yeah. At that time, our revenue dropped, or our volume productions dropped by over 50%. As a result of this severe reductions in revenue and sales volume, we have excessive manpower. That was our big challenge. We have few thousand excess manpower. So we have got to find ways and means how to mitigate the impact of having so many extra manpowers. We undertook a lot of training program. Things that we normally outsource it to contractors, we start to do it ourselves, in-house. Things like gardening works, things like security. Also, we get to do our repair and maintenance ourselves. At the same time, we take the opportunity into venturing into something that we normally do not do. We send our staff to go for centralized Askar Wataniah training, for instance. And we also set up our own in-house RELA squad so that they can sort of help us to manage in certain events that requires additional security personnel. The main, even the bigger sort of activities was where we sent some of our employees to help our vendors, whom at that time also find difficulty in mitigating the financial crisis. The biggest impact from that financial crisis is whereby we have got to stop our projects, which is the plant expansion, and we have got to stop our product development project. These stoppages have long-term impact, whereby the next few years, after the financial crisis, we are short in capacity. And at the same time, since we have stopped our product development, we have no new product to launch. So those are the impact which happens even after the end of the financial crisis. The next, please. Okay.
Datuk, proceed.
Okay. The next things that we want to look at is area of what are the skill and tools perhaps it's necessary during this current scenario in order the organizations to continue to maintain its competitiveness. In our little experience, we believe in employing or having around us resourceful people. Fortunately, Malaysia is, we have a lot of educated employees, and this supports our continued effort to maintain the industry's competitiveness. We find that one of the strategies is to have people around us, our employees, who can organize in order to be ahead of the competitors. Business dynamic is always changing. We have got to keep abreast of the competitors' activities, and we must always find a way to be at least at par on the activities vis-a-vis our competitors. The other areas that we feel it is as a strategy, we must continue to have a strong product strategy. For instance, in our case, we have got many competitors from China. We are serving our customers here in Malaysia and also overseas. Our competitors in China, they are stronger in terms of pricing since they are producing in much bigger quantity. However, we have a strong business strategy whereby our position here is that we are near to our customers. And we have decided to focus on quality, continue to upgrade our quality, because we know that we cannot compete aggressively on price. We also decided to focus our product strategy by providing superior services to our customers. In this manner, we are able to compete with a bigger competitor from abroad and also bigger competitors around this region. We believe that we need to have also a good financial knowledge so that we can always monitor the our competitiveness and our ability to have the necessary financing to undertake our business. Among all the indices, I like best to look at continuously our gross profit, our gross margin, and also our production costs. We note that we need to have a substantial gross margin, understanding that we have expenses which is ever perhaps increasing in terms of our production costs. We also believe that we need to employ technology to strengthen our business. In our case, we begin to introduce small R&D in our organization, whereby we can continuously, based on the customer's feedback, we can redesign, we can improve the quality of our product through making incremental changes in the design and the manufacturing process of our product. So I think the use of technology or understanding technology or employing the latest technology in order to redesign our product is one of the tools that we need to have in order to maintain our competitiveness. Definitely, we need to continue to have our ability to increase our revenue beside our mainstream activity. So we also, wherever opportunity arises, to introduce supplementary products alongside our main product offering. Next slide, please.
Okay, Datuk.
The fourth area that we want to look at is in the area of our local vendor sustainability, which I think it means that what are the areas that we can look at in order to maintain the, in a common word, profitability and sustainability, that we can continue with our competitive operations. In Malaysia, since about 1990s, many of our Malaysian manufacturing companies adopted our Japanese manufacturing systems. I believe strongly in this Japanese way of doing business, even though in part we are also being introduced to the Western way of doing business. I find that the Japanese management system, Japanese manufacturing system, is a strong tool to improve and continuously improve our efficiency and productivity. Since the early 1990s, our government, through the government-to-government arrangement, have started to adopt the Look East policy, whereby we, in some way, study and adopt the positive techniques of the Japanese manufacturing system. This includes the continuous treatment of the quality, the cost, and the delivery system. I'm happy to note that in UTM, there is a strong initiative taken on the total quality management system by previous friends. Professor Sari was a very strong guru in this TQM. Also, the Japanese introduced what is termed as the lean manufacturing system, which again is a system whereby we can reduce our rejects, we can improve our quality, and we can reduce wastages in the manufacturing process of our product. Again, attributes like just-in-time system, I find it as a very strong area towards competitiveness. We note that among the Malaysian manufacturing companies, since about maybe the turn of the century, the year 2000, there has been a lot of encouragement to transform our low added value activities to that of the high value added activities. For many, many years, our manufacturing industries, especially the automotive component companies, we are producing simple items like stamp parts, like plastic injection molding parts, and to a certain degree, machine components. With the introduction of computers, with the introduction such thing as value, computer added design, with the introductions of computer engineering, with the introductions of perhaps automation and robotics on the manufacturing lines, we are able to redesign our product. Instead of just making components or making stamp parts, we begin to make things like complete door assembly, whereby there is more work content, and subsequently the unit price for the complete assembly becomes much higher. The same thing like for those producing machine components, instead of just producing the machine components, we start to do complete assembly works. In our little experience, we gather all these individual components, we assemble them into brake corner modules, and we will complete these sub-assemblies and we supply them to the OEMs. The unit price becomes richer in content and the unit price subsequently become higher. However, in order to do this, we need to start to actively involve the modernizations, or in some way the automizations and higher technology that we need to introduce into our company. The third item is, in order to support the vendors' sustainability, we realized that there has been a continuous effort towards vendor rationalization. In the early years of the 2000s, we noted there were many component vendors, perhaps more than 400. Now, these vendors, the number of vendors have reduced. The reduction in numbers is as a result of perhaps acquisitions and mergers and acquisition. The other initiative that has been taken is that instead of so many vendors supplying directly to the OEM, there have been rationalization whereby the number of vendors that directly supply component directly to the OEM were reduced. So as a ballpark figures, perhaps these numbers becomes as low as about 50. The difference is that these first-tier vendors, they are much stronger vendors, and vendors that have got capability in designing, in perhaps advanced manufacturing, and at the same time, they have a stronger financial ability. They will be managing many sub-vendors. The sub-vendors will produce components to the first-tier vendors, and these first-tier vendors will be the only parties that directly supply to the OEMs. Control becomes easier, and the vendor's ability becomes higher, and in the end, it renders towards a better sustainability of the vendor community. Next, please. The other item that we want to look at is the effect on the automobile market, especially in our country. We note that our total industry volume in Malaysia has, in a way, remained at about 600 to 650,000 units per year productions and sales. This has been going on for many years. Whereas in the neighboring country, especially in Thailand, the TIV, the total industry volume at the moment has gone up to something like 2.5 million units production per year for the domestic and for the export. In Thailand, the domestic market itself has grown to something like 800,000. We in Malaysia still remain at 600,000 for a good many years. We noted also that in terms of motorization, we have already, in a way, very mobile, in the sense that we have something like 13 million over cars on the road, and we have only about 32 million population. Thus, we have actually one car for every 2.5 people. That level of motorization is quite high. We are in this situation for many reasons. Perhaps one of the reasons is affordability. The cars are expensive for most people. The other areas whereby our TIV remains something like 600,000 units per year is whereby we tend to keep our car longer. We have got so many perhaps old cars on the road. One of the contributing factor is our repayments or our hire purchase system. When we borrow money to buy the car, normally our SP term is about 9 years. Because of that, at least most of the people will keep their cars for over 10 years, so that they can have sort of retentions of their assets. Yeah? If they sell the cars earlier, then they may have to top up their loans at the bank. So because of this, our total industry value has not grown very much over the years. The other things that perhaps looking at our demand is whereby our cost of production is not very competitive against our global competitors. We tend to produce more for our domestic needs. And again, as what we mentioned earlier, it comes to questions of affordability. Perhaps the most affordable cars in Malaysia is those within the range of perhaps 30,000 to 60,000 ringgit. And this range of price is almost equivalent to 1 year of average salary. perhaps many people in Malaysia is earning something like 4,000 ringgit a month, and therefore in a year, the 1 year revenue would probably be around 50,000, and that's why in Malaysia, the popular car is in a range of probably between 40,000 to 60,000 ringgit. The new things are happening in terms of the automobile market is the introductions or the upcoming introductions of the energy efficient vehicle, the hybrids, and also the battery electric vehicle. We noticed that the introductions of battery electric vehicle is in a way slightly slower than what is happening in other part of the world. The electric vehicles has gone probably more ahead in Europe and also in China. We may not seen the same sort of inroads of electric vehicle in Japan. However, in Korea, it's beginning to take note. Again, we were trying to understand the slow growth of the electric vehicle in Malaysia. We start to go back to the questions of the affordable type of vehicle. In Malaysia, many families will own only one car. One car to go to work, one car to go on holiday. Holiday means balik kampung. And balik kampung means going back to Johor Bahru or going back to Kota Bahru. Therefore, the Malaysian motorists, we are looking at cars that can have a range of at least 400 miles. And this car must be sizable enough. In the context of the automotive industry, they call it, at least it will be a B or C segment. This B or C segments in our term is equivalent to the size of Vios or the size of perhaps a Wajah, which is, it is big enough to accommodate about 5 people in a car. That is the nature of our family, our motoring public here in Malaysia. So we note that we are looking forward to electric vehicle, the size of a B segment, or if it is an SUV, the like of CRV, or the likes of current Proton X70, for instance. That size is perhaps most welcome by our motoring public. At the same time, the price must be in the regions of 80 to 100,000 per unit. At the moment, the electric vehicles, because of its recent introductions, the price tends to be above 100,000. So we look forward to the productions of affordable EV cars in Malaysia. Another item which we believe influenced the demand is the ability of our manufacturers, the local manufacturers, to respond to the growing needs of the motoring public. In order to do that, the strategy that has been adopted by our local manufacturers is to have a collaboration with foreign partners. For instance, Proton teaming up with Geely, Produa teaming up with Daihatsu, and UMW teaming up with Toyota. In this relationship, in these collaborations, there'll be opportunity for the entity to expedite its productions of new models to the market, and at the same time, it provides the opportunity to save or to reduce the investments on the new product developments, and also giving the opportunity for a broader opportunity for sourcing automotive components. Next, please. The next item we are looking at is the critical issues in the manufacturing in Malaysia, especially for the automotive OEM, such as Geely, Proton, Produa, Honda, and also CKD operations of other brands. We note that Proton Geely or Geely Proton in the recent years or recent months introduced a very interesting and sophisticated new models in the form of X70 and also in the form of X50. This new model carries with it or is packed with many state-of-the-art accessories, many state-of-the-art in-house interacting system, and many features of navigation and connectivity. So this is the feature of cars newly introduced into the market. In order to have got this high-end cars, there is a need for strong component manufacturers or component suppliers. So one of the challenges faced by this OEM is whereby the local company is not strong enough or not high-end yet. The technology is not sufficient to support them in the supply of highly technological components. So in the case of Geely Proton, the strategy at the moment is to import parts from the established suppliers in China. If we look at the other case where Produa and Honda, they adopted a different strategy. We are mentioning this not that we know exactly what they're doing. We are mentioning this as a vendor from outside looking in. In the case of Produa and Honda, they take the opportunity to work within the ASEAN Free Trade Agreements, the AFTA, whereby components produced within ASEAN will be tax-free, brought into Malaysia. In this particular instance, we noted that there are many component factories established in Thailand. And therefore, Honda and Toyota have the opportunity, Honda, Toyota means within the group of Produa, including Daihatsu, they have the opportunity of sourcing more and more components from Thailand. So in terms of strategy, the Produa and Honda employs a situation whereby they have the opportunity to import components from Thailand or from within ASEAN. Again, we have got another group, which are the other CKD of other brands. This includes brand like Mercedes, brand like BMW, brand like Peugeot. These brands, they are very strong already in their home base. For example, all the European brands, these OEMs, they have a wide spread of component-based manufacturing all over the world, and they utilize the sourcing of all these components from all parts of the world. At the moment, perhaps there's not enough incentive for all these big OEM to establish local manufacturing for their components in Malaysia. We look forward to perhaps in the near future, when things are getting more healthy in terms of our total demand, then this company will perhaps invest more in Malaysia for the production of more sophisticated components. Next, please. Next, we are looking at, again, this is what we call it as smart manufacturing system in Malaysia and also in the neighboring countries. When we mean by the smart manufacturing, perhaps it's what has been, or it is included in what has been popularly introduced by the government in a popularly known IR 4.0. This is perhaps another new inroads into how we manufacture our products in the days of digital and interconnectivity technology. My little understanding is that with this IR 4.0, we are able to connect a seamless manufacturing system where we connect raw material inventory into the processing of our product in our manufacturing systems, and perhaps give directly a pointer to how we want to deliver it to our end customer. These interconnected digital operations, or the use of smart systems, will eventually be connected to organizational purchasing system, also a financing system. This automatic so-called digital connectivity from raw material into processing, into informations to the customer, into our purchasing requirements, and into the finance, will enable the whole organizational reconciliation to be done sort of seamlessly. And in the longer, more successful environment, there will be lesser human interactions, and it will be supplemented in an even better way by the introductions of artificial intelligence, commonly known as the AI. All over the world, the introduction of this smart manufacturing is in the various stage of development. In Malaysia, we note that, again, this is from information from outside looking in. We are not privy to what exactly in the most micro sense what's happening. However, we were informed that in the case of Proton has adopted the IR 4.0 in the production and monitoring system of their processes in the production lines that produce X70 and X50. This happened in the new factories in Tanjung Malim. At the same time, we were informed that Produa has adopted this smart manufacturing system, or we call it the manufacturing execution system in the new global manufacturing factory in Serenda. There have been a few new models that Produa has used this factory to produce the product. And again, we will like to note that in these factories, the new IR40 has been widely adopted. The situation in Thailand is a little bit more advanced. Thailand is dominated by the big OEMs, the likes of Toyota, Honda, Ford, General Motors, Nissan, Great Wall, and also the Chinese giant SAIC. Sometimes we note why there are so many big companies in Thailand. This is a bit historical. We mentioned earlier on about the financial crisis of 1998. During the financial crisis of 1998, many of the big OEMs start to acquire the business interests in Thailand. We were informed that in terms of the ownership operations or ownership status in Thailand, the big foreign OEMs were allowed to acquire almost the whole entity equity of the manufacturing companies in Thailand. We have slightly different status on that. Because of that big inroads in Thailand, there are bigger OEMs and also vendors in Thailand. As a result of that, companies in Thailand currently have been able to adopt in a bigger scale, up to 70%, the adoptions of smart manufacturing in their factories. Again, we noticed that because of that competitive environment, products are more readily being exported from Thailand into the rest of the world. We are looking forward to situations to be of that same nature in Malaysia in the near future. We look also in the rest of the ASEAN countries, particularly in Vietnam and Indonesia. Interestingly, Indonesia is rising up very fast. They have probably close to 300 million populations. Thus, the domestic market will be a strong factor in the growth of the automotive industry. And in the recent announcement, there have been new automotive entities going into Indonesia. Some are even companies from Malaysia, perhaps also adding their bases in Indonesia. We note that in Vietnam, there's only very limited manufacturing in terms of automotive. They have got the VinFast. VinFast is, again, sort of a local car manufacturing in Vietnam. They acquire technology from BMW, and I think they're also moving quite fast. In Indonesia, we do not have much information yet. The extent of the smart manufacturing systems, perhaps from now on, just like Malaysia, there will be more and more adoptions of this smart manufacturing system into these neighboring countries, which again will contribute towards a better competitiveness of manufacturing in this region. Next, please. But the next item, we try to look at what would be the impact of the pandemic into our manufacturing environment, vis-a-vis the working capital, limited operations, and also the ability to distribute. We have not direct information or direct involvement in this because the pandemic is still ongoing. We cannot perhaps accurately foresee what would be the future impact. Based on our little experience, we noticed that we need to have a strong cash flow in continuing with our operation. Thus, we note that business that have weak cash flows will be, in a way, affected by this pandemic. They may be sort of constrained in their ability to satisfy their working capital requirements in order to perhaps generate better sales. Again, companies that may have a high gearing ratio, companies that have a lot of borrowings, will be in a way constrained to meet up with their high fixed cost commitments, and perhaps they may look at what is a better way to finance their factories and how them can meet up with their overheads. Still, it is very early days to see the impact of this pandemic, and we look forward to the initiative taken by all the government of the world to achieve vaccination status or level of vaccination in the country, so that manufacturing environment will come back to normal or the new normal in a not too far distant future. Next, please. This is our last areas that we want to share and to look at. The manufacturing scenarios now within the current scenario. We'll like to note that some of the metrics we would like to look at is the return on equity. In this context, I'm looking more in terms of what would be dividend in our investment in this entrepreneur activity vis-a-vis the manufacturing. We like to compare it against the dividend rate of what we would get if we were to park our money in the bank. Because of the current scenario, when we put our money in the bank, we would probably getting a return of in the regions of 2%. So perhaps in order to maintain the interest of the investors into our manufacturing activities, a minimum of between 1 to 3% return would be necessary, so that instead of just putting or investing our money in the bank, we can similarly getting almost the same return by investing in the equity of a manufacturing organization. We note that our manufacturing organization in Malaysia is a big factor in the economic development of the country. The manufacturing industries is contributing something like 22% plus the GDP. Even not the GDP, perhaps in 2019, that was the last year before the pandemic. From the various publications, we note that the GDP then was something around 300 billion US, or in our Malaysian term ringgit, is probably 1.4 trillion. And we also note that prior to the pandemic, about 2 million people are employed directly in the manufacturing sector of our economy. Perhaps the pandemic is giving a certain impact to this employment level. And we also note that because of the inroad of the modernization of our industries, the introductions of our IR 4.0, maybe there will be an adjustment in terms of the employment or the type of employment that will continue to be involved in our manufacturing sector. We may, in a separate occasion, perhaps can go deeper into these performance metrics. We also note that in terms of strategy, it is good for us to employ technology in order to facilitate our growth. The days perhaps is no more relevant for us to go back into a labor-intensive industry. More so in our country, whereby we are in some ways still dependent on the availability of foreign workforce. Therefore, in order to step ahead or step out of this current situation, we need to employ technology, or we want to look at growth where high technology is involved, so that we can go into the new phase of the economy, into sort of a high value added economy, with the help of the utilizations of the digital technology, where we can get better penetration in our sales efforts. We can get better helps in terms of improving our product. We can have a better competitiveness through the involvement of high tech in the processing of our product. We are looking at, therefore, again, the cash flow is important as a strategy. We must at all time having enough cash. How do we generate more cash? We may have got a better or improve collection systems, whereby now invoicing can be done almost simultaneously as we delay the product, and therefore we can get a better collections. There will be many schemes selling through selling platforms, where we'll increase perhaps our direct collections from our current sales, and thus improving our cash flow. As a strategy, I believe that we need to maintain a stronger cash flow from now on. Again, we must not spend all our money. We note that the first quarter of this 2021, the growth has been quite good prior to the new PMO of 3.0. Many companies register a good result the first quarter of this year, and therefore we must take the opportunity to invest our cash reserve, cash resources into the growth opportunity. In our case, we're continuously looking at business diversifications, looking at what perhaps other opportunities in business that we can add on to our current activities. In our company also, we are looking at perhaps an equitable utilizations of our profits. We want to keep perhaps a portion of our profit for the shareholders. We want to keep a portion of the profit for the benefits of our employees. And perhaps we look at the third portion of our resources back into the company so that we can invest it in the growth opportunity. All in all, we believe that all this can be done if we have good people. Therefore, I think our strategy is to continue developing healthy human resource systems. We want to take care of our good people, and we want to continue to develop our talent so that we have more and more resourceful members of our organization. Perhaps I will end my presentation here, and if there's opportunity within the limits of my little knowledge, I would like to perhaps open to question and answers. Thank you, Professor Moderator, for helping me with the slides, and I give back the things to our Professor Moderator. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Datuk. It is very informative, and I think a very good experience sharing, a lot of knowledge that can be obtained here. Okay, before we move on, we have questions here, in the chat and also in the Facebook. Okay, let me just read for you, Datuk. Okay. All right. We have one question from Puan Muhammad Safri Haji Sabtu, Professor. That from Datuk's opinion, what is the main lacking in Proton management long-term plan that made Proton market share drop from number 1 to number 2 behind Perodua? So that's our first question from the WebEx. Over to
Thank
you,
you.
Datuk.
I can only perhaps I'm only able to see what's from outside. I left in 2006, and subsequently there have been quite a lot of interesting activities happening within the organizations. What we note is there has been some changes in terms of the corporate ownerships from Kazana, and then through DRB, and subsequently in the latest development, we note the coming in of Geely. That's what we know from outside. However, we note that there was a spell where perhaps in terms of number of new models being introduced to the market, Perodua has more new models into the market. And then we note that perhaps for good many years, there have not been new models. We note positively that recently, with the coming in of Geely, we have got the X70 and X50. Subsequent to that, the volume sold by Proton, from what we gather as a supplier to Proton, and also what been recorded from the sales data in the country, the Proton sale has started to go up. And if they have been probably number 2, now they have become a stronger number 2. So we really congratulate all the people involved there, and we as the vendors, we will share this this sort of encouraging result, because the more Proton sell, the vendor community also will equally benefit. So I guess now they have got more new models, and therefore their sales volume also increases. And there have been some public informations whereby Proton is beginning to do CKD operation in overseas. We heard it's in Pakistan, for instance. Yeah, recently they have CKD operations starting in overseas. So we look forward to the stronger growth from all the OMs in the country. I may not directly able to share you what their strategy is, because I'm just like you, looking things from the outside. Thank you.
Okay. Right. Thank you, Datuk. Maybe we'll allow any question that anyone who would like to pose the question verbally to Datuk directly. I have.
Can read the question.
Little bit at the meantime, there are a couple of questions
Right.
in
Maybe I
the
can.
Facebook and web chat.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Chat. Yeah. Question comes from our Prof. Shari. Yeah. Prof. Shari posed a question here. How do we attract foreign direct investment for the automotive industry post-COVID?
This a very, very difficult question and a very good question, especially from my colleagues. So I think, I can only, in a way, sharing the little experience that we have. In our business, we try to identify what is a good company. In our little understanding, we know that a good company is a company that always year on year pay dividend. Because that, in a way, is a measure of that the management is there taking care of the interests of the stakeholders by year on year providing dividend to the investors, providing bonuses to the employees, and at the same time retain a certain portion of the wealth in the company for the growth of the company. If we can express that in a visible fashion, then perhaps we can continue to attract investors into the manufacturing organization. In a sort of micro form, there have been strong support by the government, either by providing incentive. For example, in the introductions of this IR 4.0, there have been various incentives given by the government for us to adopt this new technology, which will eventually give us the opportunity to be more competitive. So with that sort of environment, the foreign investors or the local investors will continue to support the manufacturing industry. Again, things is very positive, whereby our infrastructure in the country keep on improving. There have been an enlargement in terms of our port facilities. There's been an improvement in terms of our transportation systems, whereby distributions can be carried out more effectively. So as a result of this, and we continue to perhaps display our country as a place where we have a lot of educated workforce. And this has been perhaps the supporting factors in the previous years why people come to Malaysia, especially if we note in Malaysia, the MNC, the multinational corporations are doing very, very well. Even during this difficult time, we call it large local companies, LLC. They are doing very, very well. This LLC includes those companies that manufacture based on the local commodities, like from the palm oil, they produce something like the oleos and the various fats. And also the MNC are producing a lot of electronics and semiconductors. And they are very, very competitive in among the global producers of such nature. So with this continued availability of educated people, ability human resources, and if we can continue to attract more talent, perhaps there will be a continued interest of investors into our manufacturing organization. That's just thinking of in a sense of what I can perhaps share at this moment.
Okay, thank you, Datuk. There is one more question. A few more questions actually. Okay, so one more question from Tuan Muhammad Safri. Yeah, what is the other key success factor that will help organization to overcome all the challenges despite well prepared in the long-term plan?
Yeah, Saudara Safi, perhaps I only know a little portions of what are the necessary successful attributes in the organizations. We are looking at perhaps from the more of the technical angle. What I believe what is important is our ability to export. Our domestic market is far, far too small. We have only 32 million people. We can only have got that much in terms of demand locally. So perhaps if we can use technology to continue improving our product, to continuously making more efficient our manufacturing system, we have got a better opportunities perhaps to move forward in the upgrading or in terms of a better achievements of our manufacturing industry. So technology is perhaps the key things. We want to copy some of the highly technical companies or highly technical nation perhaps in Europe. There are so many small companies, maybe as small as us, yet they are able to produce notable products. And these products are for global consumptions. We want, and I think for Malaysia, we have done that attributes in many, many occasions. At one time, we were #1 in tin productions. At one time, we were #1 in rubber production. At one time, we were #1 in palm oil productions. At one time, we have the tallest building. But of course, I would like to share that we are the first country in the tropics to produce cars. Not that these are the passion of our people, but I think we can. Yeah, we have got all the necessary attributes. We must therefore enlarge our markets from the domestic to that of the global markets. And in a little company of ours in Jurumuda, our business is more for export business, be it in the industrial products or in our consumer products. And we hope that we can use technology to even strengthen our ability to enlarge our markets, our sales globally. Thank you.
Right. Very okay, good question answer, Dato'. Okay, I have maybe take questions from Facebook Live. So I have one question from Prof. Zuraida. Assalamualaikum, Dato'. With regard to green automotive, what are the strategies adopted by our local automotive industry from the aspects of design and manufacturing?
We have gone a long way from in trying to look at this green aspect. If we go back something like 15 years ago, at that time we are among the few that look at biodiesel, simply because we have palm oil and we have got maybe byproducts from the palm oil industries that encourage us to produce biodiesel. That was our initial sort of thing into the green environment, into our automotive industry. Then we were looking at in a more usage of the end product life. At the end of the product life, we want to make sure that a lot of our components that we use, the material that we use, were recyclable. In a way, we believe that that will contribute toward our green initiative. So we look at the use of materials in the making of the car. More and more usage of degradable materials. Then into this new era of efficient and energy efficient vehicle. Many models in Malaysia, they belong to this energy efficiency, whereby the approach then was to use minimum energy. For example, we are looking at some stage of cars that use very little gasoline. The target or the initiative that we want to look at was, can we drive as long as possible a car that consumes only 1 liter? We are trying to target 1 liter for a car to drive 100 kilometers. Perhaps there are various level of success in that area. However, in the most recent thing is perhaps our involvement in this green technology towards the introductions of the energy efficient vehicle, the introduction of hybrids, and perhaps eventually the introductions of electric vehicles. Electric vehicles, many initiatives have been done by many organizations. The success of it is probably, we all know, the idol, which is the Tesla. However, there are equally competitive companies that are going towards this electric vehicle. There has been some probably discussion in terms of fusion fuel. We have yet to see a strong growth in the adoptions of the fossil fuel as at the moment. I will not be able to, within the limits of my capability and the limits of my knowledge, to share more in this green initiative. Thank you.
Thank you, Dato'. We have a lot more questions here, Dato'. You need to have some drink or something?
No, it's okay.
Are you okay?
I'm okay.
All right,
I'm
okay.
trying to, I know it's just that, you know,
right.
I don't know very much, you know. I'm very nervous talking in front of saudara-saudaraku sekalian in the university. But what I can share here is, in a small way, we are now in our Jurumuda, we are collaborating with our local university by participating in their research activities, how to improve our product design. We are working by participating in small research work in our local university, how we can perhaps seek the help of the universities to support us in our initiative to continuously improve our product or in trying to find new products through these research activities.
Right. That's very good opportunity for the universities as well to take up, Datuk. Okay.
Yes.
I would like to continue questions from, I think, Prof. Nordin here. Thank you, Datuk Kisai, for an informative presentation. You mentioned that the government need to offer incentives to attract the establishment of local automotive suppliers that can compete with, say, Thailand or China, parts manufacturer. Can you name some of these incentives?
There's always been the incentive the government, I think, has been providing over the years from 1-to-1 grant, for example. There have been so many type of grants that's been offered now by MIDA. I may not have the opportunity to really name specifically. What we note is with the introduction of these companies that want to adopt this IR 4.0, there's introduction grants that have been offered. There's always what my thought is there will also be manufacturing grant through Matrade, marketing grant through Matrade, which in a way our company is also getting some of the benefits from this incentive. Perhaps we want to look at the experience of other countries. For example, in Thailand in the early days, there has been no restriction in the sort of the equity participation from foreign companies. In Malaysia also, there has been vast improvements that foreign companies can now invest in Malaysia, especially in the export initiative, where the government placed no restriction in the equity partnership in the country. So I think this will further help as an incentive for investors into our automotive manufacturing. So this probably are some of the things that I can think of at the moment. Besides, there's always the regional. Previously, we used to have regional centers where incentives were given to promote certain industries in that area. For example, in Kedah, we have got the high-tech industries, Kulim high-tech. Maybe we can have more of such nature that we can have high-end industries, high-tech industries to be given special incentive to establish themselves in the country. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Datuk. I take another question from the Facebook. This is from Tuan Muhammad Lufti Iskandar. The question is that the National Automotive Agenda has been implemented for more than 30 years in Malaysia, and Proton still need to collaborate with its foreign partners. When you think Proton will be able to stand alone in that manufacturing sector, the manufacturing of vehicle, what should we plan to do now in order for Proton to not depend on other foreign car maker?
Proton has gone a long way in order to be able to produce good product. Now, with the collaboration with Geely, again, this initiative will perhaps I can only be looking from outside in, perhaps the ability to introduce more product which can be destined not only for sale in Malaysia, but more for overseas. Looking at this sort of when can we produce everything by ourselves? Perhaps we can look back in terms of the nature of the automotive industry. There has been collaborations between manufacturers around the world. We notice Mazda team up with Ford, for instance. And now that we notice Geely also working together with Volvo in Europe. We know perhaps other companies are also collaborating each other. I think that is approach from now on. There's even if we look at companies like in Czechs, we have things like Skoda. They are teaming up with Volkswagen to strengthen the organization. So in some ways, my thought is collaboration is a very efficient way of sharing development costs, sharing logistic in terms of supply chain. So I think Proton and Geely, I believe they have got a strong collaborations that will take Malaysia as a country to be a producer of automotive vehicles. We are looking at the context of a country. If we look at maybe SEAT, it used to be a small organization in Spain. They're collaborating with Volkswagen. And again, some of these new automotive production country becomes much stronger through this collaboration. So we are looking perhaps more as a national producer rather than a company producer, among other things. Thank you.
Thank you, Datuk. There's question on being competitive. I think here I can sort of compile a few in similar line. What can we do to be competitive and not lose our customer to our neighboring countries like Singapore and Indonesia? So we have like 3 questions, I think, along the same line. How can we be at the forefront and not lose our customers or investors in that sense? Not losing our to sustain our current investor and not losing them.
So if you look at we talk about companies now. Some of the successful component companies in Malaysia, we have been quite successful here, and they have now moved abroad to Thailand to perhaps advance their manufacturing activities. So with the participation of their companies in Malaysia and the new participation of the company in the neighboring countries, we can become much stronger. We can bring our technical capabilities not only to develop our growth in Malaysia, but our growth in the neighboring countries, especially in Thailand, where the market is even bigger. And some of our manufacturing companies also, after being successful in Malaysia, they have gone forward to Indonesia to establish they are repeat entity in Indonesia, where in the near future, the market will become much bigger. In this way, we are enlarging our ability, thus our competitiveness to grow. In some sense, we need to adopt the eternal growth of organization. Organization must, in a way, get bigger and stronger. So we must not just focus on the 32 million people in Malaysia. So there's always opportunity of growing our company to be bigger in a new market. And thus, our success or continued competitiveness will also come from our greater appreciations of globalization. So with this, perhaps we will become stronger and more competitive. Thank you.
There's one more question. Yeah. Typically, this is from Mahendran. Dato, typically copycats fail. Proton copies Mitsubishi, Produa copies Daihatsu, and so on. Rebranding and renaming. Ultimately, it is still a copy. With that said, it looks like we will not always excel in the automotive industry. Okay, so that the comment is that. What is your comment on that?
That is exactly true. So long as we sort of visibly seen as our product is a clone of another product, let's say that product is an upgrade from product from Japan or product from China, we may not be able to export in a big way. The perception is that people abroad, if they want to buy that product, they might as well buy the model, which was the original model, from where we sort of take our product as a derivative of that product. Therefore, there must be product redesign. We must collaborate because of the sharing of the resources. We must also at the same time visibly must make that product to be our product. It must be certain things that can link the products to the country of origin. Then it will help us to export. You see, over the years, there are only few Malaysian brands, and that brand perception is people can relate that brand to Malaysia. One brand from Malaysia is the Selangor Pewter. Selangor Pewter is developed using Malaysian talent, using Malaysian raw material, particularly tin. And that becomes a very strong brand that you can sell abroad, Selangor Pewter. Then we have another strong brand, the Malaysian Airline. I think that is a strong brand. That is a company of Malaysia, Malaysia Airline. Then we have Petronas. And it is easily being associated that this is a Malaysian oil and gas company. Of course, being from my association earlier with Proton, I like to think that Proton is one of the brands which is significantly seen as a Malaysian product. Thus, it gives us the opportunity, perhaps, to identify the product as a Malaysian product, though we may collaborate with so many people. We may collaborate with Mitsubishi in the early days. We may collaborate with now another things. However, we must eventually produce a product which the customer can see it as a Malaysian product. For that effort, there will be a lot of product redesign that we need to do. Maybe the silhouette, the features must have a certain identity. In the past, we tried to give a visual representation that this is a Malaysian product. So I think for us to export, we may have to have a product which can be identified as we produce it from here. But having said that, there are so many successful exports carrying the original brand. Like a lot of cars exported from Thailand, they don't carry their own brand. They don't carry a Thai brand. They carry the brand of the original OEMs. Could be Toyota, it could be Honda, it could be things. Still, they can export it under the brand of the original manufacturers. So that's my thought. Probably there must be certain, if you want to have a Malaysian product, then it must be something which is can be identified as country of origin. If we sort of a product that identified as a brought-in product, we may be able to sell in the country. However, we would probably take a greater initiative to export the product. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Datuk. All right. We have about 6 minutes more, but we have a few more questions here, so I will just pick them. I'm sorry about that. Okay, local vendor. It's as you mentioned earlier, local vendor can't cope with technology development needed to support manufacturing. How can local vendor be able to be part of R&D?
There are many companies that now has introduced R&D in their organization. Perhaps the level of investment in R&D still varies from company to company. What is important is the appreciation on the need of having the local R&D. At the same time, though, there may be opportunities for Malaysia being a small country, like the Malaysian government has already set up few R&D centers, either triggered by MITI in collaboration with MITE, for example, in making available support systems for the local competitive industry to introduce the IR 4.0. There's been some, used to be the automotive industries of Malaysia, the Malaysian automotive industry, the MAI. Now they have gone bigger and stronger, and they will be able to support the local industry. In the experience of bigger organization like the Malaysian, the multinational corporation, and also the large local companies, there have been a lot of research and developments introduced in their respective organization. And perhaps this initiative will start to filter down even the introduction of R&D into the vastly, in terms of numbers, the Malaysian SMEs. And the sign is good, whereby more and more companies are looking forward to the usage of new technology rather than maintaining the old labor-intensive industry. We will probably, in the near future, getting less and less the need to employ foreign laborers. Instead, we use automation and we use redesign capabilities to achieve better competitiveness in our industry.
Okay, there's one question from, I think, Encik Aris. As you mentioned earlier, sorry. Okay, this is a question concerning electric car. With Tesla and NIO start to produce electric cars, what is your opinion on this? Should we also start a new electric car company since Proton is now tied to Geely?
Well, Tesla is a big success story. A car manufacturers born out of perhaps a non-automotive pedigree. And because of the newness, they are able to organize their manufacturing facilities in a new set of manufacturing approach. And they have been successful in America, and they have been equally successful now manufacturing in China. So there's been a big success story. But of course, it requires large investment. So for us to do it in Malaysia, we must look beyond Malaysia in terms of the markets. In terms of the technology, I think it can be grown anywhere. In Malaysia, we believe we have got highly educated workforce. It will be possible for such industries to be developed in Malaysia. There have been recent initiatives to introduce electric cars, or even the good story of the possible introduction of the third national car. Perhaps in the near future, the governments may revisit this, and we as passionate followers of the automotive industry will definitely support the possible introductions of such new initiative. It will be costly. We may have got to establish a proper design for the markets, a proper feature of what sort of product which will be marketable. Because in a smaller case, we have been very successful at one time to be the world manufacturer of window air conditioners, for example. Again, that is an industrial product, which, though it is not ours, more of other brands, Panasonic or whatever, they can introduce, they can have a manufacturing base in Malaysia and export it elsewhere. We hope that either it is truly ours or we collaborate with other people, we can produce such initiative there. We heard that there are companies that are now going to Indonesia to produce the electric vehicle in Indonesia. Electric vehicle being easier in a sense that lesser number of components is needed. Previously, we may need something like 5,000 components to make the internal combustion car. Now we have got much less components to produce the electric car. They may have just the battery, the motors, and the body of a car remains the same, either it is the internal combustion engines or the electric car. What is noticeably different is the number of components become less, and in terms of maintenance, it will become easier and perhaps less costly. Only at this moment, the cost of a battery is still reasonably high, and perhaps like all electronic entity, it will become hopefully cheaper as the volume increases or as the technology becomes more common in the place. So that's just my thought at this moment.
I think I have to stop asking the questions. I have to apologize to all the participants who have posed the questions on that I have not read. Maybe I will forward the questions to Datuk if it is required, personally. So I would like to thank very much Datuk for the informative information that you share, the informative inputs, and answering all the questions and providing us this a very good opportunity for the questionnaire session. So before we end the session, two more things. Yeah, one, it will be a short closing speech by our director of the Department of Technology and Informatics, Technology and Engineering, and also a group photo session. So may I invite Professor